Hello, good morning, everyone. I bring warm greetings from the African Women and Gender Consistency to you at this side event that we're supposed to have. Unfortunately, most of us were on the queue. The queue was really, really long, and so we couldn't make it here on time. And so we're told that the interpreters have gone. So for those of you that can speak French, please, can speak English and French. Can you please sit down close to somebody that will be able to interpret? Because this week is going to help us a lot. Just a short story about the African Women and Gender Consistency. The African Women and Gender Consistency is carved out of the Women and Gender Consistency of the UNFCCC. Just last month that we had an election, and some of us were elected to represent the African region. We have 5 coordinators from each of the sub-regions of Africa, from West Africa, from North Africa, from Central Africa, from Southern Africa, and from Central Africa. And so we felt that it was important for us to be here because when you talk of climate change and the perspective from African is quite different from the others. The bulk of the issues of the climate change issues are borne by African women. And so we felt that there was a need for us to have this side event, and we really want to thank the African Union who gave us this slot yesterday after a serious thought. And of course, because we are part of the Africa, they felt that this is very crucial, and so they gave us this slot. So the title of this event is African Feminists, a climate justice perspective on just transition. This is not going to be like a top-down, it's going to be a discussion that all of us are going to have because all of us are contributory to this event. So for any one of you, it's going to be like a focus group discussion because we felt that the issues of just transition and from the perspective of Africa, feminists is of paramount importance to everyone. And so we are here to discuss, and I have all of you here, some of my colleagues that are here. Maybe we can do a quick round of introduction to know who is in the room so that at the end of the day, we are not just talking to ourselves, but we are talking to our brothers and sisters that are here. Like I said, I am Dr. Priscilla Achakpa. I'm the West African Regional Coordinator for Women and Gender Consistency. Over to you. Come on. Thank you. Let's do it quickly because we have just like 30 minutes. You're welcome, our sisters. Akwaba. Okay, so I am being told that we have to use the mic because our African leaders need to hear us. So Zozo, you come here and do your introduction again. Yes.
Test.
Hello, is the mic on? Okay, Zone 0 here from Cameroon.
Hello, Faith Lumonya from Uganda.
Faustina Ritayi.
Qabas Yasser, Sudanese Environment Conversation Society.
I'm Lee Rosette from Cameroon. I'm working with Women for a Change.
I am Foko Hilux from Cameroon. I work with Mifali, an adolescent-led movement in Cameroon, and we are part of Jeune Égalité et CAS. Thank you.
Je suis Olga de la RDC. Je travaille pour IGFA et je suis ici pour Jeune Égalité et CAS.
Je suis docteur Jess Alfred Nondo. Je travaille pour le groupe de volontaires pour la promotion de la maternité sans risque. Et je suis ici au compte de Jeune Égalité et CAS.
Bonjour tout le monde, moi c'est Bia, je suis du Tchad. Je suis sage-femme. Je travaille avec Genre Égalité et CAS. En plus, on avait un ONG à Tchad. Je travaille avec eux aussi.
Hello, I'm Fatima Ahmed, representing grassroots women organization called Zainab for Women Development. I'm from Sudan. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jessica Premasisi from Sierra Leone, the founder and executive director for Who Are Women for Community Development Organization.
I'm Dr. Helen Tete from Community Links and Human Empowerment Initiative, an organization in Nigeria.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Smenta Gloria from Uganda, Ministry of Internal Affairs, Immigration.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Now, like I said, this is going to be like a focus group discussion. So each and every one of us is going to contribute their own perspective of what is happening on the African continent, especially on climate justice, but also just transition. So now I'll call on Faith to open or to take the stage to be able to present the issue to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. It's so unfortunate that we do not have interpretation, but I'm going to try to be as slow as possible so that everyone can listen to us. So we thought that it would be important for us to have this conversation on just transition from a feminist perspective because, like Priscilla mentioned, when you think about just transition, it's been discussed in different ways. So the global north, for them, just transition is about reducing carbon emissions. But then when you think about our situation, just transition for us is about increasing access to electricity, access to energy. Within, one of the things that we often want to emphasize is to highlight the fact that as African people, we do not live single-issue lives. And it's important that even when we are analyzing our situation, we are able to take that into consideration. Because when we speak about access to energy, it's not just about access to energy to light our houses or to charge our phones. For us, it's also about being able to use the energy to add value, to preserve some of our commodities, and be able then to contribute towards a certain level of economic development. But also, one of the things that has been highlighted is that the energy needs of our context. So in terms of statistics, we are looking at 66% of Africa not having access to energy. And so this is why it's important that when we are talking about just transition, we are talking about how do we address this particular concern of the fact that even when it comes to access to energy for our hospitals, that we do not, in certain countries, the access to energy in hospitals is what word do I want to use? It's not consistent. So for example, you will have access, and yesterday there was a Tunisian young woman who was sharing how in Tunisia, they do not have water, for example, between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. Now, in our context, in terms of electricity, there are also so many places, and where I come from, like in Uganda, where there are regions that will go without electricity for 4 days. And what that then means is that there are certain things that you will not be able to do. And so addressing access, the issue of access is very critical. But also besides access is the issue of affordability. And this is very important because when we talk about enhancing our access, enhancing production of energy, we see that there is a lot of promotion of private sector coming in to provide or to finance provision of electricity. In Uganda, where I come from, the Uganda Electricity Board was privatized. And when it was privatized, one of the challenges we were facing at that time was the fact that electricity was unreliable. But at that point, when the government was in charge of providing electricity, yes, it was unreliable, but it was affordable. And so the assumption that was made was that once the electricity was privatized, that then it would be more reliable, but they did not take into consideration the affordability context. And yet when you think about us African women, a lot of the money that we make, because of the way society has allocated care responsibilities to us, you find that a lot of our money goes into expenditures around care. And so there is very little money left for you to be able to afford the luxury of very expensive energy sources or electricity, to be specific. And so when the electricity was privatized, the cost of electricity shot up. Right now, we spend between $0.5 and $1 on electricity on a unit of electricity, which is too expensive for particularly rural women to be able to afford. And so the issue around affordability is very important. And maybe as I try to summarize, because I don't want to dominate the conversation, I wanted to connect this to the topic around care work. One of the things that Ha-Joon Chang said, and he's a Chinese, not Chinese, I know he's Asian, I think he's from Singapore. He talked about the fact that the invention of a washing machine was one of the most revolutionary innovations the world will ever see. But today we see that it is internet that is promoted as the most revolutionary. The reason why it's the washing machine is revolutionary is because when the washing machine was introduced, particularly in the global north, it allowed for women to be able to get into the public space and be more involved in economic development activities, and they were able to earn more money. And so when we think about access to electricity, but also being able to afford electricity, it's important for us to think about the transformation that it could make, particularly in terms of redistributing care, in terms of reducing the care burden, because if we can access energy, then we can move closer towards being able to afford, for example, labor-intensive equipment. So, for instance, and I know it's very privileging to say to talk about a washing machine in our context as African women, because a lot of what we do is hand washing. But if we can enhance access to energy, these are some of the things that we could even be able to eventually afford, because when you think about renewable energy, for example, which is very critical, they say that in the short run, it's very expensive to set up, for instance, solar. But in the long run, it's quite affordable. And so it's important that we are thinking about the issue of affordability, the issue of accessibility, when we are talking about just transition. So I will end there, and then I can make my additional points later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faith, for giving us or presenting that scenario of energy transition in Nigeria. In Africa. Oh my God. It is indeed a huge challenge for us because when you talk about just transition and you link it up to energy, I come from a country where we generate electricity, but we don't have electricity, I can tell you that. And of course, the people that experience this most are the women from the rural community where electricity is not available at all. And in cases where electricity is, the amount that you pay for it is so exorbitant. Like, for instance, I generate electricity in my house because I have solar. But how many of those women will be able or can afford electricity in their own homes and in their own offices? It's such a huge issue that we strongly believe that the African continent and indeed the UNFCCC need to look at if we are talking about just transition. And this is also rubbing on the job creation for our young people, our young women, especially from the rural communities. Because the hours they spend in going to look for firewood, to cook, they would have used it for productive activities. But because of lack of electricity, they are now trekking kilometers to look for firewood to come. For even schooling, for even reading in the schools. So it's a really huge issue, and that this is an issue that we really need to address. At this point, okay, my sister, I said, okay, yeah, I'll call on you. Yes, if you want to contribute anything, please go ahead. I think this is...
Thank you so much, my sister. Really, this is very important issue for Africa, and especially African women. As we all know, the struggle of African women in looking for energy and also the water. Someone mentioned water. For days, even my own town in the eastern part of Sudan, for 8 days, no water. Right now, for days, no electricity. So, and we have abundance of this solar and all that. The issue of energy for African women is really crucial because, as you mentioned, the firewood is still, and this is in conflict area now in Sudan and other also areas. Women, when they go to fetch for water or for wood, they subject to sexual violence and all kind of violence. So I think the most important thing for us as an African women, when we talk in this, like this conferences for just transitions, we have to be at the center where the policies and all the procedures for this. Our voice has to be here when they are shaping this agenda and when they are putting the policies for just transitions, because we are the one who are really affected and we have to be benefited. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sister. We are the ones that are facing the burden of the issues of just transition. And so our leaders from Africa need to hear our voices. They need to act on it. They need to make sure that gender issues and human rights issues, gender issues must be at the center of development. Gender issues must be inclusive when it comes to decision making. Thank you very much. I now call on Dr. Zoni.
Thank you very much. I think
You can say that. You can say that because this is working. You can give me you can say that. That is working.
I think Auntie just, kind of nicely captured, my thoughts, because when I think of just transition, the first thing that comes to my mind is for who and with who. The conversation is not new. I believe, as Africans and African women, we have always known that the work we do, it's unfair, and we need, a more better way of living. But then, if you look at the conversation around just transition, you don't see the woman there. And yet, this is a conversation that needs, the women's perspective, because who are the women who use the firewood, like Faith had talked about? When we talk about it, we look at it from like the energy perspective in terms of how we contribute towards, ensuring that, there's the energy, we have clean energy, if I would say. So to me, when I think about the concept of just transition, I'm thinking about, that auntie in the village who needs to walk, miles to fetch firewood and to make sure that she prepares food or take care of the family. I'm looking at that grandmother in the village whose life all along has lived, to know that her only source of cooking is through firewood. And then we're talking about, transitioning into a different way of livelihood, a way that she was not part of the conversation, and she has only this particular means of survival. And we are telling her she needs to transition. So at what moment are we ready to, ensure that there is that justice in her transition? Because if you're providing, an alternative, if you are telling someone to practice a different lifestyle, there is need for an alternative. And that person has to be part of the conversation also, because otherwise they will not understand. Otherwise, there's going to be some form of resistance, okay? Because that has been the only practice that they have known for a long time. So we are here at COP. We're talking about, just transitions, and we are advocating for, affordable, accessible, clean energy. But that woman who is most affected and involved, in those practices are not here with us. So you see, we are not being just at the same time in terms of how we, carry on the conversation. And for me, I would really want, as we are in the AU pavilion, and the AU having the mandate and the leadership to work with our member states, that it's important that, the woman who is living this reality be part of the discussion, because they also have a contribution to make, and they have also a solution. Don't forget, research shows that, up to, I think, 20 or 12% of maternal deaths are as a result of fossil fuel usage. They inhale all these, toxic air that is as a result of the burning of the fuel, the firewood, and so on. It's toxic to the health, and there is definitely a need to have this addressed, and a need for investment to see that energy is clean, and it's also one that addresses and meets the realities of everyone, including women. So this is my thinking. If I want to say, when I think of just transition, what does that mean to me? And what does that mean to the community that I come from? And what does that mean to a woman? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zone. Thank you very much. Are we ourselves being just to our sisters that are in the communities? When we talk about just transition, do they know what we are discussing here? Do they really understand what just transition means? You are telling us to live a different lifestyle. So what are the alternatives that you are giving to us? We are used to fetching firewood. Now you tell us that we should stop cutting down trees. You are telling us now that we should live a different lifestyle. What are the alternatives that you are giving to us? That is when we talk about just transition. Moving from one place, one point to the other, forgetting the kind of life that we were living before. Now you want us to live a different life. So what is it that you want us to live? And that is why we're here. So I don't know if any other person has some contribution about, yes, Mrs. J.O.
My name is Elizabeth J.O. I'm from Nigeria. And she is my mentor and my sister, big sister. I'm sorry I came in a bit late. I've been checking the AWG site to check which side event is happening, and I quickly picked it. So I left from another meeting to join. I must say I'm excited being here. This is my second time at COP. And just like she said, is the entire UNFCCC process just? And I can say yes, and I can say to some extent. Because the process itself, before you get to understand and also to participate, it takes a lot. And so in terms of just transition, energy, and access to energy, we know where community women and the local women stand. Just like my sister already said it. How are we able to get our sisters to understand this language, this big grammar that we are talking here? To them, even assessing the firewood and the charcoal is not easy anymore because they have to commute several hours to even go and fetch it. These are those that are still in their communities. What about those that have been displaced as a result of climate-induced crisis? I come from a community that for a decade, beginning 2011, fast forward to 2018, almost 1.5 million people have been displaced as a result of conflict between pastoralists and farmers. Crisis. All of them, their livelihoods depends on the natural resource base. And so as climate change is compromising the natural resource base, everyone is scrambling for what is there. They are scrambling for land, they are scrambling for fodder and for other resources. And so a situation where you are forced out of your indigenous homes to be somewhere else because you're running away from conflict. And then how are we situated, how are we taking into account the different scenarios, the different perspectives of women in camps, women in host communities, women in communities that are suffering grave impacts of climate change? We witness the narratives on the long, prolonged drought in Kenya. They came out and then entered, floods. We saw women, people struggling to move. So when they are in these circumstances, how do they access energy? Then you talk of clean energy. How possible is that? So I had an intervention that we corporate social responsibility, with Total EMP, they gave us lamps, solar lamps. We gave to women and the youth as a way of empowerment, but they were to sell and to bring back the money for, retainership, and for also to as a revolving initiative. The lamps were so good because they last for several years if you treat them well. But then at that time, most women could not even afford the lamp. For those that afforded, they will tell you how good, how effective they are helping them even to provide lighting and teach children and ensure they go through their, academic works, assignments, and the rest. And fast forward to now, that same lamp for just 5-6 years ago, personally, I bought one this year at the cost of 18,000 naira. It's like about $20 or $25. How many of the majority of these women can afford that lamp? Even when I was taking the money, I felt something pinching me. You know, it wasn't easy to take it, to get it. So talk less of those women. My point that I want to say is, for those sisters that are always at various levels of this conversation, we are not saying we don't want to transit or to adapt that which is good and helpful for us. What we are saying is make them affordable. Work with us. Can some of these companies come and produce in our African nations? Is it not possible? Within the regions, many other hurdles will be removed. We, as Africans, we have ECOWAS, we have the other regions, they have their unions. They have their own arrangements of trade and partnership. What is stopping those companies to come and produce in Africa? So that our youths will have jobs, women will have jobs, because technology is key in energy transition. But then if you wait and you always are bringing it to our place, cost of everything, even including custom duties, then where are we? Until we get to the level that we are able to shift some of the conversations to a point that will benefit us Africans. As an African woman, whether in South Africa or East Africa or West Africa, in Nigeria, Cameroon, or Sierra Leone, our circumstances are the same. So until the developed nations, all of the finance that we are hearing but are not able to assess much, shift some of those things, make them reality, so that we will move from talking to action. The talking we've understood and we are following. We will get to understand. The action is what we are crying and we want to start seeing. That's my humble submission, sisters, and I'm sorry if I raised my voice. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We must always connect the dots. It's very important. Africa has abundant natural resources, and these resources must serve African continent. The women, the youth, wherever they're aged, they must serve the African continent. And so we don't want solutions that are top-down. We want solutions that are bottom-up. That is what we're hearing today, that we have abundant natural resources. Come and develop our own natural resources. You are not developed. You are telling Africa that you don't want to be developed, that Africa should not be developed. You are coming to take our natural resources to go and develop and come and give us the finished products which are too expensive, that are not affordable, especially for the women and youth. That is not what we want. What we want is come and bring your industrialization in Africa, empower the youth, empower the women, empower our communities, where some of those things will be affordable. And the floor is still open for anyone that wants to contribute. And let us welcome our sisters that are just coming in. Titi, if you can say something about the just transition. So, Faith, if you want to say more things,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
I just wanted to thank you so much for the reflections that you've just shared. I think at the beginning of your reflections, one of the things that I noted was how there's all this, there are different projects that are ongoing to give out, whether it's solar panels or it is the different cooking stoves. And I think one of the things that we need to be aware of, because as African women and women's rights organizations, there are a number of projects like this that we find ourselves in, and yet these projects in many ways contribute towards increasing household debt. So I'll give an example. I know that in Kenya, for example, GIZ has this project where they are giving out cook stoves to different women. And the arrangement is that once you've been given the cook stove, there's a certain amount of money that you're supposed to be paying back. And then eventually, you can afford this particular cook stove. And I think it's important for us to, because one of the things that we are saying during this COP is demanding for technology transfer. We shouldn't be paying for this technology because in any case, we are not the ones who caused the climate crisis. So we should not be subjected to pay for things like these. If we recognize that they are important, and those giving them to us recognize that they are important, they shouldn't be taking advantage of our needs to then subject us to additional debt. The other thing I wanted to highlight is to just share a bit more statistics to show a picture of what the energy inequality looks like. And this is not really statistics, but evidence really for you to appreciate what the energy inequality looks like. So when you think about how much energy or electricity California uses to play video games, it's much more than what the entire country of Senegal uses as a whole. Imagine a country using more electricity to play video games than what we would use as one single African country. I think it's important that even when we are talking about just transition, we're also seeking to address that particular inequality. So I think I just wanted to add that and emphasize that the issue of access, the issue of affordability, the issue of reliability is very, very important for us as African people when we are talking about the just transition before we even get to talking about reducing emissions. Thank you.
For us to get a just transition, energy transition, and as far as women are concerned, I think that we need affordable energy. For example, in the beginning, we talked about women using firewood and that kind of thing. And it goes with a lot of associated issues, which are very worrying, disturbing. It even affects childbirth. It affects pregnancy. It gives cancers. It gives eye cataracts and all that. And we need, a just transition. A just transition should be one that should be affordable. That is the most important. In Ghana, the price of petrol goes up and the price of LPG gas, which we say is the safest, but which in actual fact is the cleanest, but which is in actual fact a fossil fuel, and therefore you have to have oil and gas to get it, which is the cheapest. But the price has become unaffordable, and within the last year particular, people have gone back to charcoal, people have gone back to firewood, they've gone back to crop residue and a whole lot of things. I think, what is she? She talked about washing machines. I mean, how many of us here have washing machines in our home? Even those of us educated, those of us so-called living in the cities and all that, can you afford the electricity for the washing machine? We can't. We can't afford the electricity for the washing machine. So it's good that technologies have come, but there are simpler equipment or technologies that can help women produce, like processed food, for example. If they have cassava and they are processing it, they should have simple technologies that will help grind their cassava for them. That will help squeeze the water from the cassava for them. That will help dry the cassava for them for starch and other things. And there are simple technologies. In actual fact, women don't need huge machines or anything for anything. Give a woman a very simple technology and she'll be able to do so much with it. Give the woman clean energy to be able to use to process her shea butter, to process her palm oil, to process her groundnut oil, and all that. Simple. In addition, women need very little capital. They don't need huge capitals. So the World Bank, IMF, African Development Bank, and all those financing companies give to governments. And government won't give to women. They won't give to grassroots people. They do big projects, but women need very little capital for their entrepreneurship work that they do. So for me, if we should have a just one, it should be equitable, it should be fair, it should be cheap, it should be affordable, and it should be available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Clean energy should be cheap, accessible, available, and of course, affordable. And of course, it should be to our own environment circumstances, because there are some energies that you import that are not readily or are not friendly to our environment. So we need to take that into consideration. Thank you very much. Yes.
Oui. Merci pour la parole. Je suis Dr Jess Alfred, je viens de la RDC. Et je voulais juste parler que cette transition juste ne sera pas possible aussi longtemps qu'on va toujours considérer la femme comme bénéficiaire de nos décisions. Mais au contraire, il faut associer la femme à ces décisions. Le jour où on saura que la femme rurale est au niveau communautaire est l'élément essentiel et elle est une solution pour cette transition juste, là on va réussir le pari. Mais sinon, si on continue à gaver à cette femme nos décisions prises au haut niveau et aller le faire avaler ça au niveau communautaire, la transition juste ne sera qu'un discours. Et moi, je pense que pour faire une transition juste, il faut savoir comment travailler avec l'association communautaire des femmes. Ce sont ces femmes au niveau de la base qui peuvent eux-mêmes changer leur comportement et savoir qu'en coupant le bois de chauffage, en coupant les arbres pour faire le bois de chauffage est un danger de l'environnement. Au contraire, qu'il faut leur proposer aussi une solution alternative. Au lieu de couper le bois de chauffage, il faut peut-être faire ça pour sauvegarder l'environnement et avoir le bois de chauffage ou avoir une autre façon de cuisiner. Et enfin, le discours des fonds, les fonds disponibles, si ces fonds restent dans des grandes associations, ça ne va rien servir à la femme communautaire pour qu'il y ait une transition juste. Et il faut qu'on songe à appuyer les associations à base communautaire de ces femmes-là, même qui vivent leur réalité au milieu rural, pour qu'il y ait vraiment une transition juste. Je vous remercie.
Well, I couldn't hear what he said, but I guess that most of you that have your earphones and the interpretation is ongoing, so you must have heard something. While we're still discussing, I saw one of our big sisters, my small sister, whom I consider very important, walked into the room. So maybe she will have one or two things to say to us. Osea, please, can you hand over the mic to her? Yeah.
Thank you thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. It's a pleasure to be with you today. The topic of just transition and, of course, putting a feminist and a gender perspective to it is critical, because as oftentimes when these conversations start, women are an afterthought. When I saw the topic and I decided to come back in, I was interested in knowing what practices or what approaches has been deployed in other countries to ensure that women and those who are often excluded from these conversations are taking an active role. So not just in terms of receiving, but also actively proffering solutions. So I'll give an example. Many of our countries now are entering into agreements bilaterally or with multilateral institutions in order to move towards green renewable energy. But it's at a disadvantage to the communities that are being impacted by some of these projects. Some of the things that have come to light is land grabbing. And already women are at a disadvantage because in many African communities, for example, we don't own the land that we till on. So when land is taken again, it's a double jeopardy. First of all, you don't own the land, you till on the land, and then when compensation is being paid, you do not have any rights to that kind of compensation. But more importantly, there are long-lasting implications for many of these agreements to health care, to livelihoods, whether the kinds of agricultural practices that communities are accustomed to job opportunities arising from the renewable market that is coming to us, to opportunities with regards to even discussing issues of human rights as it's impacting women. And so I think it's about providing a holistic view to the place women should be in every aspect, not just in receiving assistance and being part of those who are beneficiaries of these projects and programs, but actually actively designing them. Maybe I should have started with introducing where I am now. So I'm Policy and Campaigns Director at Christian Aid, and we work with partners in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, particularly around climate adaptation and mitigation, and also calling for a just and effective loss and damage fund that actually impacts on the benefits of those who have been greatly impacted by the climate emergency. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that insightful discussion, for prompting us about the issues of land grabbing, which is free, whether we like it or not. Just last week, before I came here, I was working in the northern part of Nigeria. And of course, when we talk about issues of land for women, they said, no, that is not a go area. Women cannot own land. Even where they own land, they get out of, especially when the spouse is dead, if they are distributing kind of property sharing, they get 1/3 of it, just one out of the rest. And even that one, when they get it, if they have a male child, it's the male child that takes it over. And where they don't have a male child, maybe the husband's brother or somebody relevant, close, who is a male will take over. So in terms of even farming, it's even more difficult. One of the things that, made me happy is that when I went to Borno, we are talking about fragility, conflict, and displacement of women, especially in that context. One of the men said that he was able to give 100 hectares of women who has been displaced from the community to farm around Borno. So yes, we still have the he for she that are championing the issues of women cause in this regard. So that is just a reminder, again, about the issues of land grabbing, but where do the women have access and control and ownership of land? I think this is a discussion that we shall continue until the day we are able to get to that point. I don't know if any other person have some comment. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And for those who just joined, I'm Foku Hilux from Cameroon. I'm a member of Mifali, and we are part of Gen Egalité CAS. So in terms of just transition, I would like to bring an attention to the key role that young people have to play in this. And it's good that most of the speakers also highlighted that same fact. So in most discussion, we have seen how we are being asked to stop using firewood in order to achieve just transition. But it is also worth noting the way in most of our African countries like Congo, Cameroon, who have the second largest rainforest in the world, which is the Congo Basin, there's a massive extraction of firewood there, but the attention is not being posed there. In order to achieve just transition, it will be key to see how massive extraction of natural resources in most African countries is also being taken into consideration, not focusing on the way women in rural villages are using firewood in order to cook. Because if we are being asked to stop using firewood for cooking in our houses, there should be an alternative for that. But the alternative is very expensive and unaffordable for most of our mothers who live in the village far away from access to renewable energy sources. And so a key way to solve that would be massive investment into just transition for Africa. Because in order for Africa to achieve just transition, there is need to invest not in terms of loans, but in terms of funding for rural people in order to divert from those sources which they are being told to be non-efficient. They should be then provided with those effective ways to be more sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Energy is very expensive, especially for the rural woman. So if you are asking the rural woman to transit from using fossil fuel or firewood to cleaner energies, then you have to provide for it. I've been told that our time is almost up, unless if somebody has a pressing question or issue that they want to raise. I want to use this opportunity to call on African leaders that gender inequality and the climate crisis are most challenging, especially when it comes to the issues of transition, gender just transition. And therefore, we know that there is a connection between gender, social equity, and climate change. It is now the time for action to be taken towards solutions. And what we are saying solutions is not first solutions, we want solutions that are very real, especially from the context of the African woman. We also want to call on our African leaders at this point that we want increased representation in decision and policy making. Women should not be an afterthought, especially when they are making decisions. We are talking about the issues of gender just transition here and the perspective from the African context. Where the decision about this is being taken, we need to be at the negotiating table. We need to be there so that we can make input, because he who feels it knows better what issues, what solutions will come out of that. So we are calling on the African leaders to make sure that we are part of it, like what happened in in Nairobi, where the women have to really fight for them to even make a statement. We don't want to always fight to make a statement. We want to be part of you. We are your sisters, we are your mothers, in fact, you are your wives. So why will you exclude us from taking decision? We want to be part of that decision that you are making. We also want to see how the African Union can empower women, the African women in different roles. Please, when you are making decisions, the funds from ECOWAS to all the sub-regional level, we want to be part of the decision that we're making, especially in representation at the UNFCCC. Let us be part of the delegation. Talk to your leaders, talk to your countries, that as you plan to come for this delegation, put the young people, put women to be part of the delegation. Let them learn. Let there be this transition. Let there be this intergenerational transfer of knowledge from the old to the young, so that when you step aside, the young people will be able to step into that shoes because you have already prepared them very well. And finally, we want to say that the issues of climate finance, and when we talk about climate finance and just transition, is very critical. Africa has indigenous knowledge. The women have indigenous knowledge. We need finance to be able to enhance this indigenous knowledge, this indigenous technology. Please, we are saying that we are tired of imported technology. We have abundant sun that can generate solar for millions of Africans that are there. Please, let us harness this technology, let us harness these resources that we have on the African continent to use it for the improvement and for the upliftment of African people, and especially women and youth. I thank you very much for joining us at this event.